everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my ranking and reviews video for the Booktube Prize for the first round of 2024. So for the Octofinals, I was judging in the nonfiction category, Group A, and it's been a couple weeks since the decision was made. The decisions were announced in terms of what books went through to the next round. I've been away, so it's the first time I've had an opportunity to sit down and film this video, and I wanted to let you know how I did with my group. Like I said, I had Group A. I had not read any of the books prior to going into the round, and so I am going to talk about the books in order from number 6 to number 1, with the top 3 books being the ones that I voted to make it through to the next round. And so let's just get into it. So the book that I had in the 6th position was a book that was not for me. I really did not like this book. It was Cosmic Scholar, The Life and Times of Harry Smith by John Szwed. I'm sure I'm butchering that last name. Anyway, this was a book that I borrowed from the library, so it's gone back. I read it in physical. No, I had the physical copy, but I also listened to it on audiobook. It was not a book for me. Harry Smith was not anybody I had ever heard of before. Was not anybody that I was interested in reading about. He was a 20th century cultural figure in the United States. He lived from 1923 into 1991. He was involved in a bunch of the different art scenes and psychedelic movements and sort of that scene in the mid part of the 20th century. Not anything that I find interesting. I don't really like to read about art in general, and so a lot of the stuff that was being discussed in this book was not anything that I knew anything about. I didn't know a lot about the different mediums that Harry Smith worked in, and he was not a person that left a lot of documentation about his life. So Harry Smith hardly ever finished anything that he started. He was a person, like, a lot of people called him a genius. Maybe he was an autodidact. He picked things up really quickly without formal education, and he had a lot of various interests in music, especially folk music, and other art mediums. The advent of moving pictures and different technologies. Like, he was very interested in how you could meld different media types together and that sort of thing. But he didn't keep any of his stuff. Like, he would make these things and then he would just destroy them. He was also a person who collected a lot of oral history. He was particularly fascinated with, like, indigenous cultures and that sort of thing. And I was interested in that part, but as a person, he was very irritating. Like, he was not a person. He did not want to conform to, like, traditional lifestyles. So he never, like, held a job for any length of time. He never had a home. He just went around and stayed with people he could beg rooms from. So he was like a freeloader. He was more interested in, like, he was very into drugs and alcohol. He definitely had a problem. And so he was, like, on something all the time. And, like, supposedly this helped with his art. I don't know. I just found him to be a very irritating person. This is a quote from the book. He was always broke, generally intoxicated, compulsively irascible, and unimpeachably authentic. Personally, I think he was just rude, and he just used people so that he could have a place to stay and food to eat, so that he could do whatever he wanted without ever contributing anything back again. And I just found him to be very, very not likable and nobody I wanted to read about. So that was in my number 6 position. I really did not like that book. And then in my 5th position was another book about art. This was Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Dederer. And this book was all about how you separate the art from the artist. And the first half of the book, she's talking about how do you reconcile people who have made what is considered good art and who have since turned out to have done reprehensible things. And for the most part, she was talking about people like Roman Polanski, Woody Allen, Michael Jackson, like these people, J.K. Rowling, like people who have made art that is beloved, but have either hold reprehensible viewpoints that are prejudicial to other people who have actively, like, harmed other people, either by sexual assault or things like that. And so like the first few essays in the book, I thought, yeah, like I was getting into it. But then the second half of the book, she like veers off and talks about how women artists who left their families to pursue their art and how that does that make them monsters? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's harmful maybe to the family members, but it's not the same thing as like raping someone, right? Like I just couldn't reconcile the two things together. And I didn't feel like she stayed on track enough to like make her arguments that she was trying to make. And so in the end, I just felt like it was all over the place and it didn't build upon her thesis. I found that it was episodic and disjointed and repetitive, and it never came together as a whole. So that was my number 5 position. Number 4, and I'm just flipping through my notes here if you see me looking off to the side because it's been a while since I read these. Number 4 was a book that I liked a lot of it, but I had problems with it. So this is my number 4 position was The Marriage Question, George Eliot's Double Life by Claire Carlyle. And my problem with this book was this is a biography of George Eliot, the author, and her life was quite fascinating. She lived with a man who was also an author. His name was George Lewis, and I've listened to this one on audiobook too. His name was George Lewis. She began living with him. He was already married with a family. He left his wife and family and lived with George Eliot, and they lived together as married people for like over 20 years. And he still supported his wife and children, and his former wife ended up living with somebody else as husband and wife. So like there was all kinds of stuff going on here. But at the time in the 1800s, like this was not acceptable to society. So George Eliot really bore the brunt of her decision to enter into this non-traditional marriage of a kind. Like her brother did not speak to her until after George Lewis died. So that was all really interesting to me. My problem with this book was the author spoils every single one of George Eliot's books. So if you have not read all of George Eliot's books, like you are going to be spoiled because this book goes in-depth analysis and discussion of every single book that George Eliot published, which I've read a handful of her stuff. I've read Middlemarch and Daniel Deronda and, another couple books, and I like her as an author, but I didn't want to be spoiled for all the ones that I haven't yet read. And so I found that to be extremely frustrating. And like, I just can't, I think that's really awful to do to somebody, to put all of that in a book without like giving you a warning up front, like this book is going to spoil the storylines. And I know a lot of people think, oh, it's a classic, you can't spoil a classic. If I haven't read it yet and you're telling me how it ends, like literally the details of how a book ends, that's spoiling it for me. I don't mind a synopsis, general themes, whatever, but like to literally say, this is how the book ends, I don't need to read it anymore at that point. So I thought that was really bad. I think this book does a great job of talking about like marriage and what is marriage and like the structures around marriage and societal expectations. That was really interesting, and how those themes also permeate Eliot's books. And Eliot herself was a very interesting person. Like she struggled a lot with her own ideas of her own self-worth and whether or not she was a good writer or not, but she was extremely talented and very popular while she was alive. So that all was really interesting. So if you have already read all of George Eliot's books, like please read The Marriage Question. I think you will love it. But if you have not, beware. So those are my bottom 3 books. My top 3 books are the books that I voted to go through to the next round. And in the 3rd position, I put A Memoir of My Former Self by Hilary Mantel. And this is a collection of Hilary Mantel's writings that were published throughout her career. Hilary Mantel, of course, has since passed away. This book was published posthumously. And it gathers her previously published materials. She did a lot of writing for newspapers and magazines and things like that throughout her career. She did a lot of literary criticism and movie review type writing. She wrote about just personal essay type things. And I listened to this one on audiobook as well. And this book is great on audiobook because there's multiple narrators and different people come in to narrate different aspects of the book, because the book's sort of divided up. It like gathers together, like, for example, all of her movie reviews and all of her literature reviews, and then personal essays about different topics get gathered together. So I thought that was fun. Like other essay collections, this was a mixed bag for me. I did not like the movie reviews in general. I mean, these were movies that came out in the like 80s and 90s. The ones that I had seen, the movies that I had seen, those reviews were great. But if I hadn't seen the movie or even heard of the movie, like, not really interested. Same with books. These are reviews of books that came out in the 80s and 90s. If I'd read them, great. If not, like, not really interested. But I loved her personal essays. I think she is an excellent personal essayist. And she wrote a bunch of essays as well on what it's like to be a writer of historical fiction and what you're looking for when you read historical fiction versus when you're writing historical fiction, and her thoughts about politics and nationalism and books and reading. Like, all of those are great. So, like, the personal essays and the essays about her writing life and historical fiction, fantastic. The essays on movie reviews, book reviews, not so great. So that was in my number 3 position. In my number 2 position was another biography, and this one was a chunky one. This was King, A Life by Jonathan Eig, and I loved this book. I thought this book was excellent. I did a combination with this one as well of listening to part of it on audio and reading part of it. I thought that this biography does a very great job of capturing King as a real person. Like, it's not just like sing the praises of Martin Luther King Jr. This is like Martin Luther King Jr., the man, the real human being with all of his flaws and foibles. And I appreciated that so much. It's 642 pages, so it is a long one. But I found it very interesting throughout. And I think the audiobook was really well done as well. The narrator was fantastic. I will say Coretta Scott King was such a trooper. Like, she put up with so much, having Martin Luther King Jr. as a husband. He was not a good husband. He was a good husband in some ways. I mean, he obviously loved her and he loved his family. I mean, he cared about them and wanted to take care of them, but he also cheated on her all the time. And he was so focused on his path of being the leader of the civil rights movement. Like, a lot of times his family life took the back seat. And I think that is something that we don't think about maybe all the time, about these people that are considered like great figures in history, you know, great leaders of people, like people who bring forward a movement and like are the figurehead for that movement. Like, how does that impact the regular people in their lives? Like, how does it impact the children? How does it impact the spouses, the other family members? And King was not an easy person to be married to or to have as a dad. He was focused on his own, what he had in mind, that he felt was his calling, that he felt he was being called to do. And you can't argue with that. Like, he was a fabulous leader of the civil rights movement. Like, if it wasn't for him, like, who knows what would have happened. And he put his life on the line over and over and over again. But that's hard on the family. And I thought this book does a great job of showing that. It was fascinating. It was inspiring. It was heartbreaking. It was engaging. It made me mad. All the feels from this book. So you can't ask for more than that from a biography. I mean, it really brought Martin Luther King Jr. to life for me. And it also gave me a better idea, more context around that time period of history in the United States during the civil rights movement, during the 60s. So interesting. I just really love that book so much. But my number 1 book, surprising no one who saw what all the books were in this particular grouping, the one nature science related book in my group was The Underworld, Journeys to the Depths of the Ocean by Susan Casey, which was a 5-star read for me. I mean, I highly recommend this book. I thought it was fantastic. I read it as an ebook, and luckily my ebook, I could read it either on my Kindle or on my iPad, and because there's lots of color photographs. So I would highly recommend, if you are interested in reading this book, to get a physical copy or get an e-copy that you can read on your tablet so you can see the color photographs, because they're fantastic. So this is a book about the historic and current methods that we have available to us to explore the deep ocean depths, like the, thousands and thousands of meters below the surface of the ocean. What we knew in the past, the technology that's developed to allow us to explore this region of the earth, and what we currently know about what lives there, the formations, the environment, the different critters that live there, and how important deep ocean water is to the overall climate on planet Earth, and how important it is that we not F it up, to be perfectly frank. It's super important that we not F it up. This book is awe-inspiring and exciting, and informative. The characters that are described, the people that want to go down these depths in submersibles, like, they have some intestinal fortitude that I do not have, right? Like, they really have a lot of courage and a lot of wonder, and just this drive to know, this drive to learn that explorers have, right? These people, they're scientists, obviously, but they're also explorers. And it's really interesting to see how we've sort of evolved back around again from, like, in the early days, it was like wealthy white guys who had the money to sort of look and drive the exploration under the sea. And then governments kind of took over in the middle there, like government funding for deep sea exploration. And now we're back again to governments don't want to or don't have the money to do that exploration. And it's like wealthy men, or mostly men, that are like funding this stuff, like funding the technology that's driving the innovation in submersibles, like putting their own lives on the line. Like, it's just amazing to me that, like, people whose background isn't necessarily in oceanography or marine science or anything like that, who just want to know what's down there. They just want to know what's down there. And, like, I am inclined to, like, be really skeptical of people like that. And, like, yeah, sure, you just, like, have a lot of money to throw around. But I was won over by Susan Casey's writing. And I will say this for her as well. Like, I've never read anything by Susan Casey before, and I know she's a well-known science writer. She is a fantastic science writer. She really brings this information to life. She really paints a picture in your mind. I think she's superb at her job. And I am really excited to read more from this author. The one thing about this that was like the thing that stuck in my craw, and it's not about the book at all, it's about deep sea exploration in general. So these submersibles, when they go down, they have to have ballast weight to get them to, like, you know, because they want to float. And so to get them to sink to where they need to be, you know, tens of thousands of feet under the water, under the surface of the water, they have ballast weights. And when they're done doing their little exploration at the ocean bottom, they jettison that ballast weight in the ocean, like, every time. And I'm like, you're just leaving junk at the bottom of the ocean. Like, here you are exploring, and you're talking about how important it is not to pollute and not to continue, like, the path of human development, which has just been like, whatever we want to do is fine, and we're not going to worry about what it does to the earth long term. Like, you're just leaving hunks of metal on the bottom of the ocean. Like, that doesn't seem sustainable or, like, good or whatever. So that's the one thing that's stuck in my craw about all of this. And it has nothing to do with the book and only about deep sea exploration. But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So that earned my #1 spot. So I am happy to report that all of my top 3 books made it through to the next round, and all of my bottom 3 books were dropped, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. So that's very exciting. I have gotten assigned Group B for the quarterfinals round. So I will be reading nonfiction Group B for this round that we're currently within. Thanks, as always, to Robert at Pages and Pores, who is our fearless leader of the Booktube Prize. I will link down below in the description box the webpage for the Booktube Prize. And, you know, please also link the Booktube channel so you can go and check out the videos that Robert always puts up when he does the announcements for the end of each round, which are fantastic. Love them. So yeah, please go check out other people's videos about the Booktube Prize, because it's so much fun to see what other people thought of these books and how they rank them. Anyway, that's it for my ranking and reviews, and I will be back at the end of the quarterfinal rounds with my thoughts on that particular group of books. I hope you're all doing well and finding some good books to read. I'll talk to you later.